2001 when the WWF right in 2001, when the WWF came in and bought us, was the time for me to excel and kick out, or to fall in, and I didn't have the chance and I fell in.
So for context now, when you say Jim, you're talking about Jim Ross, I'm guessing.
Yes.
Who's the head of talent relations at that time, who
Yes.
you knew from WCW, I'm sure.
Yep.
All right. And you're mentioning if you had been warned, what would that warning have consisted of? What warning would have resonated with you at that point?
Well, like, who gets fired, even if it was true, over a bad match? The match that I saw, there was not one mistake in it. It was,
It's
it
not
may
that,
not have
it's not bad, man. It's not that bad. No.
It may not have been psychology a good match, but who the hell gets fired over a psychology bad match? If that was the case, there'd be 10 people fired every night. So it was no warning of like, you know, hey, Bagwell, that was a bad match. Any more bad matches, you're fired. Hey, Bagwell, your mom called. She calls again, you're fired. You know, I didn't get any kind of, even, I didn't know. I was blown away when I walked in that room, and Jim Ross and Johnny Ace and Jim and Vince McMahon were in that room that day. I was blown away. I was like, oh my God, I'm getting fired. Keep in mind, I never had a job to get fired from. And I had to raise my hand. And Vince goes, you don't got to raise your hand, Mark. I said, I feel like I must. You're telling me I'm getting released. What's the difference of getting released and fired? And they had a difference. They said, if we released you, we can bring you back in 3 months. And if we fire you, we can't. So they were trying to make released better. So I'm still not getting warned. I'm still getting lied to. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm not fired. I'm coming back in 3 months. But really, I'm going, there's no way that's possible. So I asked the question again, and Vince goes, you don't got to raise your hand. And I said, so I asked another question, and I could just tell it was over, and there was nothing I could do about it. There was no, I wasn't like looking for a warning. I just hadn't gotten trouble. So how do you get fired without there's got to be a little bit of fire before, a little smoke before there's fire. There was smoke, but I didn't see it.
All right. So there's somebody somewhere has some rationale behind this. It very possibly makes no sense at all. So
Right.
let's assume, let's just take the leap and say you were absolutely unjustly released. What does that, first of all, now I want to ask this question. Maybe you haven't been asked this one before. How do you look at that now? Do you have any remaining bitterness over that now? Is it just something that happened to a different version of you and you've moved on? How do you look at that at this point in your life?
Man, I to be honest with you, I think about them listening to me right now and them going, you know, Bagwell, get over this. It's 23 years old, bro. Are you kidding? But we're talking about it, and I don't know what else to say except the truth. And the truth is, Jim Ross lied. Jim Ross called me up and he said, and here's the problem with it: Jim, me, and God only know what happened that day. And God ain't going to come on this podcast to tell us. And in the world of wrestling, Jim Ross is going to be believed much more over above Bagwell. And I get that. But what truly happened is Jim called me up after the Booker T match and said, hey, we got big plans for you in Atlanta. We want you to take off these house shows. We'll see you in Atlanta. Get ready. Man, I was fired up all week. I was in the gym. I was tanning. I show up in Atlanta and I get fired. And the story is my mother called to get me out of those towns, which isn't true. And the bad match is what the reason they fired me. And again, I watched the match back and was like, what are they talking about? It ain't like a barn burner, but it wasn't bad. So yes, I have a truckload of animosity over it because it cost me